Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about a newer theatrical release called The Empty Man. Before I begin, let me know in the comments if you were looking forward to this or what your thoughts were if you've seen it already, and make sure to give this a thumbs up if you like these reviews. It helps me out immensely if you do that. Also, if you're new here and you like movies, whether it be blockbusters, hidden gems, or everything in between, please consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with reviews of new releases and some classics. But now, let's jump right into it. This horror film stars James Badge Dale as a former cop named James, whose daughter is one of a group of teenagers to go missing in a small Midwestern town. When it's believed to be the work of an urban legend known as the Empty Man, James begins to investigate and runs into mysterious people looking to summon the creature, which puts his life in danger. This is based on a comic book series of the same name and is the feature debut of director David Pryor, who also wrote the screenplay. And if you haven't heard of this, don't worry, because it was dumped into theaters late last month and didn't begin advertising whatsoever until literally a week before its release, and wasn't even screened in advance for critics. It was shot back in 2017 and is one of the holdovers from Disney's acquisition of Fox, and it seemed like they just didn't know what to do with it. And if you were to watch it, it makes sense. I feel like this movie wasn't sure at times what it wanted to be. Based on the name of the movie and the concept, it seems like just another slasher monster movie with mainstream appeal. The Empty Man himself has this set of rules that allow him to emerge, which I'll talk more about in a minute, and we see a few sequences of him going after various people in grotesque fashion. But at other times, it tries to go for this more avant-garde approach, and it gets very confusing. Like, James Badge Dale's character is haunted various times by these visions. There's a constant whispering played over his scenes of an unknown character saying, "Where were you?" over and over again. And there will be moments that have this almost minimalistic approach, with a few scenes feeling like non sequiturs. It's a very grim, somber movie overall, and it's one that I often found to be very emotionally distant, with scenes of James Badge Dale by himself, staring off into the distance and wrapped up in his own thoughts. He lives by himself, and he's separated from his daughter's mother, played by Marin Ireland, but we never really understood why. And while both of these performances were fine, their characters were people that I never cared for, because we don't learn much about them. And even the Empty Man himself, it was never a monster I found intriguing. It's really a generic boogeyman character that hides behind long exposition dumps and a complicated set of rules to make it seem more intriguing than it actually is. And I found those rules kind of ridiculous, to be honest. The way to summon him is it requires going to a specific bridge, blowing into an empty bottle, and then still specifically thinking of the Empty Man, and then he's summoned. And he then works over the course of 3 days. One day the victims hear him, the next day they see him roaming around, and finally he gets them to commit suicide, and a message is left saying, "The Empty Man made me do it." So what happens is this plays out over the course of those 3 days, and once you understand those rules, for the most part, you'll know how this plays out. And despite a seemingly short amount of time, the movie feels incredibly long, running at 2 hours and 17 minutes. There's an opening sequence that goes on for 20 minutes by itself, focusing on a separate group of people out on a hike and get stuck in the middle of the storm, and they accidentally summon the Empty Man, and we see the 3 days play out before they're finally attacked. And this sequence was fine, and might actually be the best part of the movie, but ironically, it has little to do with the rest of the film. This isn't even what James Badge Dale's investigating, and it's almost inconsequential to the main story. The next half hour or so after that focuses on the initial disappearance and Dale questioning one of his daughter's friends, and he's walked through the night they were on the bridge. All in all, between that and the opening sequence, this takes up roughly the first 40 to 50 minutes of the movie. And up until then, I thought it was kinda okay. It was still slow moving and grim, but it was at least watchable. After that though, you begin to feel that runtime as we watch these 3 days play out, and it'll be a mix of very dragged out jump scare sequences that you can see coming from a mile away, in between these long spews of exposition from various people Dale meets as he tries to piece everything together. The most egregious of which being a sequence where he runs into an old colleague, played by Stephen Root, who gives him some potential backstory about the Empty Man himself that you forget almost as soon as the scene's over. And this might just be a pet peeve of mine, but part of the reason the scares weren't as effective to me is because most of the time there was a scene involving the Empty Man or someone controlled by him, there was this one whisper-like sound played every single time, and it was just this gibberish, like the fake whisper noises you'd hear in a cartoon for a silly effect. Specifically, it would be... And the way the sound mixing was done, even when a character making that sound was really far away, it was the loudest noise in the room. It was probably done just to make sure you heard it, but it was supposed to signal something was lurking or something wasn't right, but it was such a ridiculous sound effect and it was played at the maximum volume that it came off as annoying rather than frightening. And the movie ultimately becomes a chore to get through once we hit that second half with these boring, repetitive sequences. But where it really lost me was the ending. I'll keep things spoiler free, but it tries to tie everything together, and there were things that we almost forgot about from earlier in the film that come back around in the play. And we get this speech from one character that's supposed to be a big reveal, and it's a very confusing speech. It's this big twist, and it's presented in a way as if all the pieces of the puzzle have now come together, but when you sit there and think about it for more than 5 seconds, it ends up making no sense whatsoever. Like, I actually left the movie more confused than anything, mainly because even when it presents us this big reveal, it still uses very cryptic, abstract language to describe it, and it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It was supposed to provide satisfaction, and I got none of that. At the end of this very long runtime, there was no sense of closure, and it was a disappointing end to a disappointing movie. What a mess. There were a couple of decent things about this, such as the performances and the opening 20 minutes, but ironically, the best moment wasn't exactly needed to tell the rest of the story. This is an overlong, confusing, emotionally disconnected film that seems more interested in dragged out jump scares and long exposition dumps rather than telling an effective horror story. I really didn't enjoy it at all, and I wouldn't recommend it. The Empty Man gets a 3 out of 10. So let me know, did you see The Empty Man, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did you like the concept? Did you find it scary? And what's one of the worst movies you've seen lately? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll catch you next time.